The commissioner here is along with his team of counsel and researchers.
Good evening, and thank you for coming. And I'd like to welcome the commissioner along with all of his staff to this very important meeting. And I think it's very important that we have individuals who are affected and those that are still missing, that their concerns be heard, especially from their families. And it's too bad, I have to say, it's too bad that this wasn't, in my opinion, wasn't very well advertised, because I think there's some people that should be here that aren't here. But having said that, I would like to welcome you, and I hope that there's some good input for the commissioner and his staff to take away to build on what needs to improve or what needs to be identified that may not be identified. And I'd like to invite Chief and member of our society, Marty Adams, to open with a word of prayer.
The messages that were really important. And we're here tonight with another turnout, and we've done the right job, I think, in telling people about our work and inviting mayors and councillors and chiefs to come. And we're grateful for the people who have attended, because they're the people who do have an interest. And we're particularly grateful as well to the many RCMP who've come out over the last couple of days, and I expect will continue to come out. So we are indeed very grateful for the hospitality that we've been shown. I know the commissioner will want to welcome you in his own way, and thank you as well. I really want to say that. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Well, one thing I should mention to the speakers, Linda, the RCMP have specifically asked me to say to people, if you have evidence about any outstanding police matters that you think might be of interest to the RCMP, one of the reasons they're here in force is because they want to hear about that. And when we were in Gittingham a few hours ago, I could see after the forum that people were talking to the police about evidence or facts or things they've heard. So the RCMP specifically asked that you be told that you're more than welcome, if there's something you think the police should know, to hear it directly. So I wanted to say that at the outset, because it's obviously important.
Thank you, Linda. And first of all, welcome to all of you that are involved in this very important work. And I'd be honored to offer up a prayer for guidance on behalf of all of us. And just ask you to all bow your heads, please. So, Pinamstoyas, Nin, Stor, Amasa, Pinaman, Panic Snow, Eveline will Saikwan Kun, Wilden to Sigil, Pinam Stem, Tip Amagaras, Renedis, Pinaman, Khanix, Ishkia, Inish, Wildar, Saikwan Kun, the Willen, Inin, the Man, Danko, Kinams, the Mula Willen. Just about we Isam Kasas, Sigil, Seven, Yuksat Kun. Will mean him to Jesus Christ and will. Amen.
I want to thank you, Adams, for attending here and offering your prayers, and also your leadership in inviting us here. I want to say at the outset that we're absolutely delighted at the reception that this inquiry has received. We had a full house yesterday, as Mr. Bertley said, in Prince Rupert, and as well this morning we more than filled up the time here, and then we went to Gittingham, and again we had a full house, and we heard some really heart-wrenching stories. You know, we're here examining some of the horrific tragedies that have taken place in this community on the Highway of Tears, and this is something that has deeply struck the chord, the heart of this community. It struck the heart of our province. You see, essentially what had happened was the province established this inquiry a year ago after the Supreme Court of Canada had finally disposed of the appeals of Robert William Pickton. And at that time, it was thought that an inquiry was in order as to why so many women went missing, particularly in the downtown east side of Vancouver, why so many women were killed, and why those killings went on for a prolonged period of time. And so what happened? So the province then established an inquiry and asked us to examine 4 issues. One was to conduct hearings in Vancouver and to inquire into and make findings with respect to the conduct of missing women's investigations. Primarily that dealt with the downtown east side, in other words, the Pickton incidents. And the second term of reference dealt with the findings of fact regarding the decision to enter a stay of proceedings against Mr. Pickton on charges of attempted murder, assault with a weapon, forcible confinement, and aggravated assault. The third area of reference that we were asked to investigate and report on deals with the initiation and conduct of investigations in British Columbia of missing women and suspected multiple homicides. And finally, to make any necessary changes with respect to homicide investigations in BC by more than one investigating organization, including the coordination of those investigations. In other words, how are the police sharing information when they get information in multiple policing jurisdictions? Most of this province is policed by the RCMP, but there are municipal police forces in the Lower Mainland, and there's one in Nelson. So that's one area that the province wants us to look at. So what that really means is that there'll be 2 parts of the inquiry. A hearing commission, which means that witnesses would be called, lawyers would be present, evidence would be given under oath, cross-examination would take place. The second part of that inquiry would be what's called a study commission. Each of those is important in their own way. The study commission is what is taking place here. And the study commission involves the listening to and taking into account what people in the community say as to what could have been done to avoid the tragedies that we're now dealing with. What should the police do when they receive complaints of missing women and suspected homicides? So what happened was that after the Commission of Inquiry was started, we went to Prince George in January, and we heard from the community that it wasn't acceptable to only deal with those incidents in the Lower Mainland, that the Highway of Tears has seen terrible, terrible tragedies taking place. And it was incumbent upon the Commission of Inquiry to come to the north and to listen to the people, to take their advice as a part of the study commission to find out what can be done to avoid those tragedies, what can be done to help the police, to give them information so that the investigations can be conducted in a productive way and in a successful way. As you know, there are anywhere from 18 to over 40 women that are missing in the north from the Highway of Tears, Highway 16. Now, those tragedies have taken place, and there doesn't appear to be any type of solution. The tragedy here really is that the women, for the most part, or many are Aboriginal, are poor. Many have no voices in the community. And it's important that we deal with them. The fact that they're poor, the fact that they may be Aboriginal and may be disenfranchised, means that we have to work extra hard to make sure that we achieve justice for those women and for those families. We've heard heart-wrenching stories in the last day and a half that we've been here. And this is a community effort, and this is a community response that we need. And we need to hear from you, and that's why we're here. We were in Gitnau this afternoon, and it was heartbreaking to hear stories from loved ones, from relatives of women that have gone missing, young girls who have gone missing since 1994, 1995. You can imagine the horrible feelings of parents, uncles, aunts, and families who will never see, in all likelihood, their loved ones again. And they deserve to have their day in court. And that's why we're here. That's why we want to hear from you. So, as Mr. Bertlieb said at the outset, the response here has been fantastic, and we're grateful for the community response. Having said that, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that I'm somewhat disappointed that in Prince Rupert yesterday, no member of City Council, no mayor, turned up. And here we are in Terrace, and there's no one from City Council to my knowledge. The mayor is not here. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mayor.
I'm the mayor of Terrace.
Oh, the mayor.
Oh.
You didn't know. I apologize sincerely. We didn't know you were here, and I'm glad you're here. But that doesn't take away my criticism of what happened in Prince Rupert. And you know, this is a community tragedy. It's not a tragedy of Aboriginal people. It's a tragedy that belongs to all of us. Every person in British Columbia has to own this. And it's an obligation for all of us to address this, to see how we can improve what's going on in our community, and to see how we can help the police, how we can help the victims, how we can help the families. So I would thank you sincerely for all of you who have taken part in the inquiry. And again, my apologies to you, Mayor. I didn't know you were here.
I should have introduced myself.
Sorry,
My
thank you.
apologies.
I look forward to hearing from you this evening.
Sure.
So thank you for attending, and we will hear from you. And I would point out to you that I know that some of you may not feel comfortable in speaking in public. Take your time. You're under no pressure. If you need some extra time, we have all the time in the world to listen to you. You're important to us, and this is not a formal inquiry where you're under oath and be cross-examined, and you're here amongst friends, and we're receptive to you. Thank you again for attending.
Thank you. I just wanted to say before I read what I wrote it because it's really close to my heart, and I have a lot of emotion. And I practiced over and over so that I can be clear. I think it's important. And thank you. I was related to two of the women that went missing from Vancouver. I have to say that whether or not their DNA was found at the Picton farm makes no difference. We know when they went missing. I think of the missing mothers whose children could not handle the pain, and the families who find it so difficult to even talk about it. The compounding grief for those left behind. It's difficult to know how to support someone in such a situation. More than 50 women were affected. 26 of those had DNA linked to the Picton farm. And Mr. Picton was charged with 6 murders. The Globe and Mail article from August 4th, 2010 refers to the defense team challenging the fact that DNA found in ground meat in a freezer on Mr. Picton's farm meant that the women were dead, that their DNA profile might indicate no more than that the women sneezed on the meat. One of the missing women was also my dear friend. I don't know if I've ever driven by that farm. When I feel this pain, I cry, I let it go. And yet, there's an enormous hole in my heart that tells me the wound is still wide open. So much uncertainty. Each of the missing women have their 2 biological families. Many have children, meaning a nuclear family, and in-laws have been deeply impacted. 6 of those groups were acknowledged when charges were laid. Their families were able to begin to process the unimaginable grief, which leaves 20 groups whose loved ones may have sneezed on packages of meat or what have you. And more than 25 other groups who may wonder about the 2 unidentifiable DNA profiles which were found. I can't think of any words that describe the pain I feel today. Even as a frontline worker who talks, writes, and does whatever it takes to process this grief every time it crops up. Our culture sees that no one stands alone through anything. This feels pretty immense. All of those affected need some kind of resolution to acknowledge the possibility that it could very well be that their loved ones could have been there. To say that someone hears them, that their loved ones are much more than a statistic. This procedure this evening is an acknowledgement. Healing needs to begin and must be continued for a meaningful period of time so that people can learn and practice whatever it means for them to process their grief. A suggestion was brought to me today to provide funding for families and their supports to travel to the Picton property to conduct ceremonies to free the spirits of their loved ones, so that we can also begin to cleanse our spirits. Of course, followed by therapeutic healing with grief counselors specifically designated for the missing women in question. Being mindful that not everyone will be ready to participate at the same time or in the same manner. Justice will not be done if we are merely subject to government mandates about what constitutes justice according to procedure that is made up as we go along. The people affected must be sincerely regarded.
Okay, thank you again, Linda. And again, I want to commend all of you that have come here to carry out this very important work. Also like to commend our mayor for taking the time to be here. Problems that are First Nations people experience do have a lot to do with some of the issues that you, Mr. Opal, mentioned in your opening remarks. And that has to do with the poverty. And in saying that, it raises issues that aren't that easy to deal with. You can identify them, but what to do about it is another thing. The state that our society in has taken generations of different influences that bring us to this day where we're trying to think of ways to deal with them. These are some of the thoughts that have come to me in discussions that have taken place to do with these kind of very serious effects, I guess, of those issues such as poverty. I was in a meeting on Saturday, mainly attended by youth in Prince Rupert. And it is encouraging that some of our local politicians are taking the time, such as yourself, Mayor. In that day-long meeting in Prince Rupert, that is to do with suicide prevention. We held a parade down there, ended up ending up in the Moose Lodge. And there, a lot of the comments began with not knowing the answers. Not knowing the answers, but knowing that we had to give it the time. That with the grace of God, that we would arrive at some answers as to what we should do, what we could do. And it's encouraging to hear and to see people that may have some ability to affect some kind of change. Because it does affect all of us. That is one thing that I know is true. It's not an Aboriginal problem. It's our society's problem. And so those of us that see ourselves, yourselves as leaders, need to be involved. And that's what I refer to when I say it's encouraging to see all of you here. The ripples that happen when we lose any of our sisters, affects for such a long time and reach so far out that we can't say anything, but it does. It is a society problem, provincial problem. As to how long those ripples take effect, I guess I can give an example of the two of our family members that my sister mentioned that were amongst the people that are the missing women down in Vancouver. The sister that my sister referred to as a dear friend left behind two sons. And in the years since her disappearance, and those young boys grew to young adulthood, they both committed suicide, which I'm almost positive would never have taken place if their mom had been around to give them the guidance that parents are supposed to. In that way, there are some similarities to the effects that residential school had on our society. And I believe those are connected. They are connected. Some of what we're talking about today are the ripple effects of that whole issue, the residential school issue. I heard some suggestion that it may have been advisable to separate the missing women of Vancouver from the Highway of Tears, because I'm able to speak partly on behalf of our family members that are missing. I'm glad that it wasn't. And taking into consideration that what I just mentioned about how things are connected, things that our people experience are connected. I think this is another one of those cases. As with some of the speakers down in Prince Rupert, and I imagine some of the speakers that you have heard up until now, I don't have any answers either. Nothing that we can just grab onto and say, well, this is it, we found it. It's not going to come like that. Answers may come slowly as you travel to the different communities and hear different suggestions and hear different perspectives, different ways of looking at it. I'm sure there will be some suggestions that are totally new. Not having any answers except to encourage all of you to keep on with the work that you're doing. I've heard some of the coverage on the meetings that you've had already, and some of the suggestions as to what could be done to do with transportation, to do with people pointing out that it has a lot to do with poverty. What law enforcement might do to help out with the situations that we run into. I think those all have the potential to address, even in some small way. And so it's encouraging. It's encouraging. That's moving forward a little bit. Encouraging to myself, and I'm sure to a lot of our people that are here. We're all here because we're concerned about it. And all of us are touched by it. We have family members that are involved in the people that we're talking about here. And we're also giving them a voice. So without taking up much more time, I'm going to use the encouragement that our people use in our own language. And it's just to encourage all of you. Sam Wilson. That's what our people say. Carry on your work. It's serious work. And make it from the best of intentions. Sam Wilson. Make it for the best of intentions. Thank you very much.
Chief, Martin Adams? Mr. Woodley will have a question for you if you don't mind.
Chief, I just have one question, if you don't mind. You've heard the commissioner speak, and he said it on a number of occasions, that being here and dealing with the concerns that your people have and others have in this area are just as important to him as what's happening in Vancouver. So you've heard the commissioner say that. He said it many times. We did hear some comment that there should have been a separate inquiry for the North. You have said that you're glad the two inquiries are not separate, that in fact they're all as one. Could you just tell us why you have that feeling?
Yes, thank you. Mainly because it gave the opportunity to speak to the missing women in Vancouver, because our people that are closest to us as far as family goes, these were our sisters that my sister was referring to. Our sisters that were amongst the missing women. And I guess if this was restricted to Highway of Tears, I may not have had that opportunity to mention that. Having said that, I don't think I don't think there's anything to prevent me from also speaking on behalf of all of those families that have been affected by the Highways of Tears, the Highway of Tears. I think it's good that we're able to do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. I just want to thank you very much for coming. I just want to tell you I fully agree with you when you said that this is not an Aboriginal problem. It's a societal problem. It's a problem that all of us have to deal with as Canadian citizens. And the treatment of Aboriginal people, the history of mistreatment of Aboriginal people in this country is well documented, and that's really at the nub of the problem, some of the issues we need to deal with. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank the Terrace Nisga'a Society, our colleagues, for giving us this room, the building, and giving us a chance to come together, and the commissioner and his group for making the efforts to come and listen to all our stories that we have to share. As mentioned this morning, I listened in this morning, I heard some really good comments from both sides of the table. I really want to thank you for giving us the opportunity. No inquiry is complete unless you hear from the grassroots people, from the people that have and still have a little bit of hope in trying to find some of their loved ones. My name is Claude Barton. I come from the Nisga'a village of Kingola. Kingola, it's the other way they say it. Our highway opened as recent as 2002 in December. Our membership list is a little less than 2,000, with roughly 450 living on the reserve, meaning we have 1,600 Kingola Nisga'a members living in Prince Rupert, Portet, Terrace, Vancouver. The majority of our population is out here, outside in the urban areas. We have one lady that lived in our community. She's a young lady, a few years younger than me, that hasn't been seen by her family for years now. I'm not too sure what the status of that is. I've heard one of the key things that I liked so far was the mention of communications. Communications is very key to all levels of whatever we're doing, all levels of government. The RCMP, the efforts that they put into it, the elected bodies, the health boards, the provincial, federal government. We all need to be on the same page when it comes to trying to solve such a serious issue. Coming from a small village, we tend to trust anybody and everybody. I have a 15-year-old son right now. When he was about 8, 9 years old, not too long after the road opened, there was a really nice vehicle came in, a fisherman. We didn't know him. He's not from here. I'm not too sure what, might have been from Smithers or somewhere, but he wasn't from any of the Nisga'a villages. But he had such a nice car, and my son was really fascinated by it. Without even thinking, he asked to go for a ride, and the guy took him for a ride. And it was just before dinner time when he did that, and we were looking for him because he didn't come home for dinner. But he trusted him. He didn't think of that guy could have taken him away. We're very thankful that he didn't. But it's the way our communities are. We trust everybody. And we need to educate our young people. It's not just ladies or young girls that go missing. We've heard it earlier. We've heard it many times. And it's not just First Nations. So it seems unfortunate, no disrespect to anybody, it seems unfortunate that First Nations are always stereotyped as it. Really unfortunate. Kind of hurts, it really hurts actually, but we deal with it. It makes us stronger, and we want to help more and more when we do get stereotyped and we get put over here or over there, just because of our race. Not necessarily just Aboriginals, but many races, I guess. I listened this morning, and to me, I really like people speaking from their heart and hearing what they have to say. But I felt, my own personal feeling, I felt it took away when this gentleman started questioning back. I realized it's just for clarification on your behalf, but to me it kind of seems intimidating when somebody comes back and you start losing what is coming from here, and you start thinking other ways. What you really meant wasn't there, instead, because you get questioned another way, and you're asked to kind of clarify what you meant on it. But deep down, we know we're all here, we all want the same thing out on the table. We're all here to resolve this. We're all here to help each other get to the bottom of this. educate our people. It was really nice to see all those signs put up on our highways. There's one leaving our community. Like mentioned this morning, it doesn't say anything, it's just got a picture like that and a red circle around with a line across it. And that says it all. Everybody knows what that means. But again, with the industry moving so fast, logging, mining, whatever it may be, we have many, many different contractors coming and going. And one thing I've realized in our community is when it comes to ourselves, we do intensive background search for each other to make sure that this guy that's working for us now, and he's living 3 houses away and we know him, but we do all these checks on him to make sure everything's okay with him. And then a contractor comes in that we don't even know, it comes like 100 miles away, 300 miles away, or 500 miles away, and we just right away give him a job without doing any background checks. Just he shows us his ticket. I'm qualified to do this. And that's all we look at. We don't do any further background checks. That's how trusting we are, and that's one thing that we are learning very fast that we need to change. And again, I'm really glad that we had this, we are given this opportunity to speak into this inquiry. I'm really thankful that it is happening. It can only get better from here. It's really hard to accept that there's still so many people missing. But I think we all want to heal. We all want closure. And this is one small, small step. And again, thank you for the time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.